Welcome back to the Stephen Knight Show. Adam, you're holding it down tonight. Chick is out. What did you
Yeah.
watch?
Oh, well, so I have to catch up on some things that we watched over the past few weeks, but my first question to you is, do you remember, and you're probably too young just like me, so I wish Chike
Probably.
was on because he could tell us. Freaknik. Did you ever
I
go?
watched
Did
that
you
on
have?
Saturday. I
Okay,
watched it.
good. We're gonna
Yeah.
talk about that here.
Yeah.
Uh, so that's what first thing I watched was Freaknik, The Wildest Party Never Told. And for anyone unfamiliar with this, it's Freaknik was the Black college spring break that happened
Yep.
since 1983, which I didn't even know
Yeah.
it was around that long.
I
And
didn't either.
for listeners, this is on Hulu if you want to watch this documentary.
Mhm.
But it really traces the roots back to the DC Metro Club
Mhm.
uh, in Washington, D.C., that came down and decided to host a picnic in Atlanta in Piedmont Park. And over the years, it grew into this crazy party. And by crazy party, I mean this was like the place to be. This was the
Mhm.
spring break location
Right.
in Atlanta, and it really, from the sounds of the documentary, and there's a lot of factors that kind of put Atlanta on the map, including the Olympics and the hip hop scene. But
Yeah.
breakneck was a big part of it, and this movie kind of recounts the story of the people who created it and
Mhm.
the people who grew up in the area. And again, I was too young for it, but I remember actually
Yeah.
hearing about it because I grew up in Atlanta, and so we would hear it on the news. My parents
So
would
you
watch.
heard about it as growing someone that grew up in Atlanta. You heard about it.
Yeah, we heard about it
Yeah.
in real time, and they
Oh
mentioned the
wow.
mayor at the time, Bill Campbell, talking about
Yeah.
Freaknik and stuff like that. I just remember seeing it as a kid. And I'm like, oh, this sounds like something cool and crazy. But of course, I'm like 10 years old, so I'm not
Right.
going
Right.
anywhere
Right.
uh,
Right.
in the city. But yeah, it was a very present Atlanta thing growing up, just hearing about it and
Mhm.
it shutting down. And yeah, this documentary kind of covers it and how it got so big, and then of course,
Yeah.
a lot of non-college kids were going to it, and the Olympics and the optics, and
Mhm.
how like the mayor at the time was going to kind of shut it down. uh
Right.
I will say, so I did enjoy it. And again, I think if for anyone interested in that kind of slice of the 90s, because that's when that was
Mhm.
peak Freaknik, and we're in a big 90s kick right now in culture. So, go watch it and learn about it. I will say a couple things though. I wish we heard more from the creators, because they made a big scene at the beginning of like, oh, we're all getting together and this is our first time
Right.
seeing each other in so many years, and then you'd only get little snippets of them throughout the story. Could we hear them talk about it more. And
Yeah.
then two, it kind of sputtered out in the end, where it's like this guy decided that the trademark was available because Adult Swim had a show with T-Pain and Freaknik,
Yeah.
and that trademark expired, and they're trying to bring it back. And people at the end were like, "Yeah, you can't bring it back," which is true. I think
Yeah.
it did capture a moment in time, like they say in the documentary, before the internet, before cell phones, when really it was
Thank God.
yes, yes. A lot of people were talking about that, like, oh, if they had cell phones back then, and that's why you can't get it now, right? You're not gonna get away with any of the
No.
kind of goofiness and silliness. But it was also interesting to hear about like at Outcast, and they're passing their tape out in 1994 because their
Mhm.
album just
Mhm.
came out like the week before, and like early marketing, and like really it's cool to see giving your album out to all these people who are college students, and they're going to go back all the way across the country to their schools,
Right.
and your music is getting distributed out there. And I do think that played a big factor uh,
Mhm.
in the Atlanta hip hop scene. Again, the documentary plays it, and we had Usher for a little while too, and like we had some of that already, but yeah, it was kind of cool just to kind of get the input from people. What did you think?
I thought, it was interesting because, when they first announced this documentary, people were trying to get it, they were boycotting it. They were like, we're now attorneys, we're judges, we don't want to see us on documentary busting it open.
Yeah.
you know. But I did think they did a good job with, they showed some faces, but they really kind of made it more about the event and about the people. You know what I mean? And but listen, I remember hearing about Freaknik, but again, we were younger, so it wasn't anything of our time. But people talked about it. I remember one point they talked about bringing it back, and I don't think it ever did. But yeah, that was definitely a wild time for what we could see in the documentary. And thank God cell phones and social media wasn't as prevalent as it is now. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and it was, and again, we'll have to ask Chike when he comes back if he ever got involved with it. But it was very interesting the way they kind of shut it down was just making traffic so bad that the college
Yeah.
kids were like, I don't want to come back to here. It wasn't fun. I was sitting in the road on the
Right.
interstate for hours in a
Yeah.
parking lot. And so, you know, I whatever you feel about the city's tactics on it, it was very interesting to see that they didn't ban it. They just really made it uh not fun to be
Difficult to
around
attend.
anymore.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's fun. It's fun to see again Atlanta back in those days. And
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. They when the lady's like, oh, the Daisy Dukes, these were not Daisy Dukes. These were beyond that. I was like,
Right.
you watch the
They
clips, you're
still
like, yep.
get to do. You're right. You're
Yeah.
right.
So highly recommend if you're looking for a nice, like, fun documentary to watch. And switching gears, actually, the next thing I saw was Shirley. So this was
Mm.
the latest
Saw
Netflix
that.
release,
Yeah.
with Regina King starring
Mm.
in
Her
the title
first
role.
comeback since her son passed away.
Yeah, yeah, and Regina King is one of those people that can transform into any role, and she knocks it out of the park with this. She plays, for anyone unaware, Congressperson Shirley Chisholm, who decided in 1972 to run for president. And
Hmm.
she was a congressperson from a New York neighborhood. And it's really her story of how she kind of wanted to challenge the system and really go out there.
Yeah.
And Regina King does a great job. Actually, all the actors do a good job. It's a kind of a fun. It's a good story. It's really like
Hmm.
I did enjoy it. I will say, and I didn't think about it too much at the time, but there's a lot of that. Like if you're into those political, like counting
Hmm.
delegates and oh, we got to get this percentage, we got to campaign here,
Yeah.
you'll like this. And it lost me a little bit there where they're trying to do math, and not that there's anything wrong with math in movies, but I'm trying to enjoy things, and I'm not trying to figure out how
Right.
many delegates people need. Uh,
Yeah.
but again, it was a good ride, and I think Regina King, she'll keep at it. And another notable person is Lance Reddick, and I don't know if this is his last film. I'd have to
Oh
look it
yeah,
up.
before he passed away. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, he does a great job in this, and Terrence Howard
Mm.
too. It took me a while to
Mm.
recognize Terrence Howard
Yeah.
because he's
Yeah.
usually playing such a commanding role, and in this, he's just like a normal, everyday person. So
Right. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, highly enjoy though. So if you're looking for another, if you have streaming series to watch
Yeah.
or film to watch, check that one out.
I liked it too. I was excited when I first saw it because I had seen a documentary on Shirley Chisholm. But I saw an article where they bashed the movie. They said it should have been great, but it wasn't. But the thing is, they were complaining about so much being left out the movie. This is a person's life. You can't hit on every note. They were saying how when she had the argument with her husband about the money, she wanted to put more money towards the campaign, and then they didn't talk much more about it. Then you find out they're divorced. They wanted to dig deeper. You cannot get someone's life in a 2-hour movie. You know what I mean? But I think what was interesting though that I didn't know this, Adam, is that she had divorced her husband after the campaign and marry Terrence Howard's character.
I
I
saw that.
didn't
I
know.
read that.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. So to your point, Stephen, yeah, no one should expect a full biography in
right.
a 2-hour movie.
Yeah,
What the movie should do is encourage you to read more about the person and learn about
exactly.
them. And
Yeah,
yeah, that's right too. It's so funny because they didn't really hint at it too much in the
they
movie,
didn't.
but yeah, she divorced him and married her campaign manager,
And
and I was
like two
like,
years later, like
yeah,
it was quick. It
yeah,
wasn't
oh
like
yeah. There was a lot of something going on that we did not see in the movie.
Yeah. Well, I thought it was a good movie. I thought it was a good movie. And I love the way that it showed even in that time how people of different backgrounds and lifestyles came together for that cause. You know what I mean? And I don't think she ever thought she was gonna win. I think it was more so I'm gonna make a statement. You know what I mean? And people believed in it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, and it's whoever played the young girl who also becomes a senator later or a
Yeah.
congressperson.
In
I think
California,
that
yeah.
the most one of the most important parts in the movie because even I mean now and even then you still have people who say, "Oh, I don't want to register a vote because my vote doesn't count,"
Hmm.
and that's not true. Keep
And that's
registering.
right.
Make sure you're out
Yeah.
there, even on election days that may be like insignificant. Go out there and do your voting,
Very
because
important.
this woman, she was just a college kid that didn't even care about being part of the system, and now she's
Yeah.
in it and she's making
Now
moves.
she's in it. Yeah.
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 Um, And then the only other thing is, so I mentioned last time I was watching The Gentleman, the Guy Ritchie Netflix series. I finished that up. It's fun. It's good if you like Guy Ritchie, you like those gangster British style shows. I won't go into too many details, but I did enjoy it. Lots of fun, lots of action, lots of little British shenanigans. What you would
Yeah,
expect from a Guy Ritchie movie. So and it's Guy Ritchie series, so definitely check it out if you're a fan of that.
absolutely. I know the war season is completely over. Anything coming down the pipeline?
Yeah, there's a couple, and I can't think of them right now. But I will say one thing I do want to watch, and it's been on Netflix already for probably a week or so, is the Three Body Problem.
Mm,
If anyone's been hearing about this is getting a lot of hype. It's based on a sci-fi novel, and it's a famous sci-fi series. There's 3 books in the series, and it's highly regarded. But it's also done famously by the people who did Game of Thrones. And so,
mm,
if we forget how Game of Thrones ended and see how it began and how it
yeah,
kind of reached its height, uh, you got really good cast and good production behind it, and a lot of people have been liking it. So it's all on Netflix. I just haven't had a chance to start it, but that's high on my radar.
absolutely. Well, listen, thank you so much for letting us know what to spend our time and money on and what not to. And we'll be back next week. Thank you, Adam.
All right, thanks.
And right back up to this.